everybody, this is Hero back with another Dragonflight video. In this video, I'd like to talk about 10.1 Resto Shaman tier set. Two parts to this, let me read them and I'll give you my thoughts. So the two piece, when you cast Healing Rain, all allies with your Riptide on them are healed by Tide Waters for 140% spell power. The four piece, each ally healed by Tide Waters increases your haste by 1% for 6 seconds and increases the healing of your next Riptide by 10%. So there are some elements to these two tier set pieces that I'm encouraged by, and some parts that are concerning. What do I think is interesting about it? First of all, it orients you to think a little more about Healing Rain casts. It is something that we're generally speaking casting on cooldown for PvE in both Mythic Plus and in Raid for slightly different reasons. Acid Rain is a bit more of a thing for Mythic Plus, so we're trying to hit enemies. And we don't care as much that our friends are in the Healing Rain the whole time. Whereas for Raid, we really want to get it onto our melee or ranged group in a centralized location that will help to be efficient healing. Great. So prioritizing that or getting a payoff for casting Healing Rain consistently is nice. It's also interesting that you are starting to leverage Healing Rain casts as a throughput button on cast. So we have a little bit of this, in the Overflowing Shores, where Healing Rain is going to instantly heal the people that are in the rain. But this does a nice job of disentangling it from positionality. So it doesn't matter where the people are, as long as they have Riptides on them, Healing Rain, when it's cast, will heal them. So that's kind of cool. Also, the spell power coefficient is quite high as a floor. What this means is if you are playing to a Riptide build, and you have a lot of Riptides out, maybe 8 of them you could have out at once, maybe more, you are leveraging a significant amount of spell power, something like 800% spell power being added into Healing Rain, if you like. It's one way to look at it. Also, the Tide Waters bonus for the 4-piece, though it looks a little awkward, and I'll talk about that in a second, it's actually a lot of uptime, given that you cast Healing Rain every 10 seconds or less. Healing Rain is affected by haste, so its cooldown is lower depending on how much haste you have, which is kind of, goes into this haste thing here. If you have 8 Riptides out, you're getting 8% haste for 6 seconds, which is about half to 3/4 of the duration of the cooldown of Healing Rain. So that's kind of interesting in the sense that in terms of raw numbers, if you have a lot of haste in your kit, you are going to get extra value from having Healing Rain down. However, Healing Rain isn't actually haste isn't actually that strong necessarily for Resto Shaman. And maybe we will index a little bit more into haste as a result of taking advantage of this. But there are some detractions that I want to mention. Well, I should say before I do that, you are getting some significant buffs. So every 10 seconds or a little bit less, you're also buffing your next Riptide. Now, I'm not sure if this is buffing both the direct healing and the hot, or if it is buffing one or the other. My assumption is it's intended to increase both sides of this, which is a lot of throughput if you think about it. 170% spell power if you're taking Torrent, and then 132% over 18 seconds if we're taking Wave Speaker's Blessing. If you multiply that or amplify that by another 30%, 40%, you're getting a pretty reasonable buff to this spell every time you cast Healing Rain. So those sort of play together reasonably well. One of the troubles is what this is going to do is provide a sort of what we might call a negative gameplay feedback loop for the Resto Shaman. What do I mean by that? There's a lot of gameplay loops in this game that provide a sense of satisfaction that the player is taking advantage of the mechanics, is overcoming any of the detractions that are related to it, and therefore is really experiencing a lot of excitement or joy doing the rotation, helping their comrades, whatever you like. But a negative feedback loop would be where there's a kind of pressure or anxiety to perform it correctly, and there's a high cost if things are done out of order or if you miss a buff, or if a buff is consumed or used inappropriately. Like Disc Priest is a great example of this, or Mistweaver Monks, another great example. In Disc Priest, if you do your ramp incorrectly in a raid, then you're missing maybe multiple targets that should be getting your healing and people die. Or, you put them in the wrong order, so your schism is out of order of your mind blasts and all this stuff, then you don't get effective healing throughput out. In the DPS side, it might be like arcane mages doing the correct order for their Kyrian and their arcane surge, these sorts of things. So some people enjoy having to tackle lining things up properly, but if you're tying to a 10-second or less cooldown, a gameplay loop that forces you to press Riptide all the time to maximize its output, you are potentially introducing a negative gameplay loop for your player base. So Resto Shamans will feel this pressure the whole time they're playing with this tier set to get as many Riptides out as they can. And even if you index, as I'm doing in this example, into all of the relevant Riptide options like DRE, which is great by the way, Primal Tidal Core, even Primordial Wave to get more Riptides out. All of these pieces are fine, but you have to be pressing Riptide constantly, or else you're going to feel like you're not getting as much value out of your Healing Rain casts and this synergy as you want. And of course, the question that's going to come back for most Resto Shaman is this really better than Chain Heal? Like, is it so much better that I need to adjust my playstyle completely to account for this? And the answer will obviously remain to be seen from testing, but it's really difficult to justify taking all of the chain heal pieces and modifying your gameplay to include chain heal in all of its various forms across the whole board when you have so many Riptide pieces to add into this. So it's hard to tell, right? What's good? The other piece to this, the negative gameplay loop element, is that you are disincentivizing people from casting spells other than Riptide, like Stormkeeper. Not just healing spells, but spells like Lava Burst and Flame Shock. We've gotten rid of the whole weaving Flame Shock in to give you a bonus. That's been done away with. Fine, that's good. But now we have this trouble of, if I use a GCD or two to get out Lava Bursts, Flame Shocks, to Chain Lightning, I'm losing opportunities to give myself haste to do a big heal, especially in raid, I think, with this Tidewaters piece. And all of this is looping together. I don't know if we should stress that it's such a horrible thing, but I do want to emphasize that when Blizzard makes these things, there is this problem of the gameplay experience and players' desire to play at a high level. And what does it mean to outplay or to play efficiently or to do something that is in line with the benefits that you're getting? And some of the specs provide a clear path that don't make a problematic gameplay loop for the player. It's just all gravy, as it were. Hey, now your slam is hits 4 targets, these kinds of things. Hey, now you just get, if we're talking about Elemental Shaman, now you just get Stormkeeper every 40 seconds. This kind of thing is awesome. It's a passive piece that's given to the player that then offers them some upside. They don't have to work hard to maintain it. They don't have to really think too much about rotational changes. It's glamorous and exciting because Stormkeeper looks amazing when you cast it. So just firing off your chain lightnings into earthquakes and then suddenly having this giant Stormkeeper proc go off, it feels great. And then there's ability for you to min-max the use of it. Whereas for Resto Shaman, I have to tune my whole gameplay to be Riptide oriented, and we're not sure if that's even really better. And I think it's probably fine, to be honest. But then you feel bad the whole time if you're not maximizing your Riptide uptime. Does that make sense? Like, think about an raid. You have to triage someone. You just press Healing Surge 2 or 3 times in a row. Your next Healing Rain is automatically worse. What does that mean? Well, just let the other specs triage. Let Holy Priests and let Holy Paladins Maraud's them. Just do your rotation. That's what it will feel like for raiding Resto Shaman, is they will ignore triage just to pump as many Riptides as they possibly can, because the value is just better if they ignore triage to do Healing Rain healing, which gives them more haste, which allows them to do more stuff. See what I mean? So this is the question of whether this gameplay will feel good and will pay off a player compared to orienting yourself completely to chain heal or something of that nature. The upside, I will say, especially for raiding, is with things like Mana Spring, I don't know if in raiding we're gonna need Resurgence or Mana Tide Totem. We'll have to see, but Riptide has tended to be a low mana gameplay, although casting Healing Rain a lot maybe takes away from that. But you can see how strained I am already. I don't have Earth and Wall in this piece. Probably Torrent has to go, which is sort of awkward for this idea. And maybe we need to grab some of these other pieces. But you can see that's the problem. Like, if I have to devote so much to Riptide to make it worthwhile to take it, is this tier set really encouraging? The problem is you can't get away from it. That's your tier set. So you're going to feel obliged to use it. And those people who are doing more chain heal stuff and have a couple Riptides out at a time are now, in this weird stage, because you have to choose between High Tide and Primal Tidal Core. And that's a completely distinct set of choices for what you're benefiting from. Big chain heal idea, big Riptide idea. Anyways, that's my takeaway from looking at the Resto Shaman tier set. It is early days, so they may change it, and I sort of hope they do. In particular, I'd like to see the haste buff be changed and shifted away, and I'd like to see there be a decoupling between the 2-piece and the 4-piece from the Riptide gameplay. One of them offering you some Riptide gameplay, great. But what would happen if you said each ally healed by Tidewaters increases your next chain heal healing and reduces its mana cost by X? Then you're suddenly offering the player options for how they want to think about it. Do I want more Riptides so that I get a bigger single chain heal and I can use it as an emergency? Do I want just to focus more on chain heal stuff and I get this steady benefit that makes all the chain heals I'm casting more relevant? These are the sorts of things that I think could help to really mitigate against forcing Resto Shaman down one path, which is maybe a little awkward. Thanks very much for tuning in, guys. We will catch you again next time.